There's a lot of action on the electoral front. In fact, the latest election polling in the U.S. points to a tight race between Kamala Harris and Donald Trump. At 78, Trump is running for a third consecutive time after losing to President Joe Biden following a single term in office. Harris, meanwhile, could make history as the first woman to win the White House. Let's make sense of that electoral race and several others. And for that, we're joined by SABC international editor Sophie Mokoena, who's with us here once again in Studio 9. Great to have your company at these seminal moments. Thanks as always for popping by. We'll begin in the U.S. I mean, it's coming up for 5 a.m. in Washington, D.C., just over 24 hours before the polls start to open there. The temperature certainly heating up.
Yes, indeed. That is why you see the two frontrunners, Kamala Harris and also Donald Trump, the former president of the United States of America, are now focusing on the 7 swing states. And those swing states include Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, North Carolina, Georgia, Nevada, and also Arizona. But the main interest for me is Michigan and also Pennsylvania, because it has got the largest number of votes for the Electoral Commission. When you look at the numbers there, you'll find that there are 19 votes to grab. And also Michigan, much as it's not second, it's third with 15 votes. But the technicality here, or the interest here, you have lots of African Americans or Black Americans or blacks, but also other minority groups, and also a huge number of votes in terms of those who are in support of the Palestinians or the Middle East question, who are supporting for the Palestine to have its own state and the two-state solution, but also calling for an end to the current conflict in the Middle East. And therefore, the fight now is to ensure that you get these votes, and particularly when you look at those undecided votes, because those who are supporting the candidates and the parties, their minds are made, but you still have a number of people or voters who still has to decide what to do in terms of what could be the possible outcome of the elections in that country.
Absolutely. And you know, that approach of kind of breaking the US down into their states is very important because of the electoral system there. When you win a particular state, even if it's by a margin, you get all of the votes to the Electoral College. And sometimes that's what makes the difference between the popular vote and ultimately winning the presidency, because of those Electoral College votes.
Yes, and if you represent that state, you have to go according to that vote of the majority in that state. You can't even change the vote. It's against the law. And therefore, it becomes very, very critical to ensure that you get these votes in these swing states, and therefore you bind the Electoral College members in those states to ensure that they put forward the number for you.
All right, we'll watch the situation very closely. History might very well unfold from tomorrow. But closer to home, we did see history unfolding in a very dramatic way in Botswana. Masisi officially being booted out. He's acceded the outcome of that election. And in fact, there was a phone conversation he had with his successor, Boko.
Yes, this morning the handing over of the office by the former president, Masisi, to President Boko, and it went very well. So he has officially occupied that office. And I think now the engagement with the technocrats or the civil servants in that office is to prepare for the inauguration and perhaps where to from here. And officially he is now in office. You'd recall that he was sworn in on Friday, so he is the president of Botswana.
A very different picture unfolding in Mozambique, of course, because there's still a lot of tension, in some instances violence, as the outcome of that election is still being contested.
I got a tip-off that the leader, Mondlane, is now outside the country in Europe. I suspect that will be Portugal, a former colony, if my prediction is correct, but he's in Europe. He left the country and he's busy mobilizing on social media, online, for people to continue to defy the outcome or the announcement of the results. We haven't had much from Frelimo in terms of where to from here, including the inauguration, but it is tense and there's sporadic protests in different parts of Mozambique for those who are rejecting results, but nothing has changed. But quite a worrying situation in Mozambique, because when you know the history of Mozambique during the civil war, where Renamo and Frelimo were fighting and Renamo was supported by the apartheid regime, you wouldn't want to see that situation playing itself again. Fortunately, this time around, South Africa will not take side and support the bloodshed or ensure that the Mozambicans are killed in their country. You also have the other foreign forces in Cabo Delgado. I think because now you have a situation, the standoff, people will abuse and misinform people about what's happening. Rwanda is there because this was a long-standing arrangement to stabilize Cabo Delgado. Working with the SADC contingent, they have been able to repel the insurgents. Now people are now taking or trying to use that situation to score points, particularly the opposition. But the reality is this situation has been there, and many people in that area are happy that those foreign forces, including the ones that were there on behalf of SADC, were able to stabilize that region because people were dying. The insurgents were killing people.
Absolutely, and that's exactly what I was going to ask next. It feels like the environment is very fertile, for lack of a better term, for this to really escalate, given some of the instability we're seeing in places like Cabo Delgado.
Yes, and I think it will be important to ensure that that situation in Cabo Delgado, you contain those contingent or those foreign forces that are deployed in Cabo Delgado to remain in Cabo Delgado, not to move in the capital city, Maputo, because that will send a wrong signal. It will be like now these foreign forces are now taking sides. So yesterday, the spokesperson of the government of Rwanda responded to me to give assurance that they will continue to be only in Cabo Delgado, where they are fighting the insurgents and protecting the Mozambicans. And I think this will remain. And I don't think the Mozambican government will have a leeway to abuse the power and the strength of those foreign forces that were able to stabilize Cabo Delgado, because this was affecting South Africa, it was affecting Tanzania, the neighbor, and therefore you don't want that powerful contingent and powerful and good project aimed at protecting Mozambicans to be abused by anybody else, politicians from both sides.
Absolutely. You know, I remember in March, you and I were speaking about how big an election year 2024 is. And even as we reach the tail end of the year, there's still huge elections to look out for, even in our regions. Namibia comes to mind. They go to the polls at the end of this month. And it's the first election following the death of Hage Geingob.
Yes, our focus now will shift to Namibia starting from Monday, because we know that Namibia is our neighbor. You have SWAPO, the former liberation organization, the two countries' cordial relations. We saw the current president of Namibia, who took office after that tragic death of President Hage Geingob, coming to South Africa, meeting President Ramaphosa in Cape Town, what one could interpret also as part of the farewell and briefing him about state of readiness. But there are issues there, opposition complaining about the Electoral Commission. Like many other countries ahead of elections, you find that there are issues with the Electoral Commission, but that will be our firm focus. Of interest is the SWAPO candidate, a woman. Are we going to have a second woman president in the region? Or are we likely going to see another huge change in that country? We'll see as we continue to cover elections in Namibia from all points and including all political parties who are available and accessible in Namibia, because remember, you can only speak to people who are available.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think few people will be brave enough to make predictions now, given just how these elections have panned out, at least in the region this year. So we'll watch the space. And of course, our viewers know this is where they get all the updates they need. On a completely different note, though, I think it'd be remiss of us not to speak of Quincy Jones as we speak about international relations, in a way, because he's been such a towering figure in music. I imagine, of course, as more Americans wake up to the news of his passing, there's going to be a lot of reaction to that.
For some of us, the oldies, I think we really resonate with Quincy Jones. I mean, his powerful use of music, but also being the best producer, I can say, in the world when coming to music. I mean, people like Michael Jackson, the late Michael Jackson. But for me, for Africa in particular, you would recall when there was famine in Ethiopia, and he put together, and some of the producers, artists, artists from America, and they came up with that song, We Are the World, raising funds for the children in Ethiopia who are dying of famine. And therefore, these are some of the work or the legacy of Quincy Jones, not him only, with others, Brooks Princeton and many others. And that song, a very powerful song. Even to date, the young generation, they still like the song, particularly when they are looking at the old music, because you can see now the young people, they are packaging the old songs so that they can resonate with them. And these are kinds of songs that young people must know, that when we talk about Quincy Jones, when Africa had a challenge of famine in Ethiopia, he didn't hesitate to assist, and he was very close to Nelson Mandela. He did perform in many concerts where they were fundraising and profiling Madiba during struggle years, and also raising funds for the Nelson Mandela Children's Fund and also the foundation.
Yeah, when you hear the story behind the We Are the World song, I think it gives it even so much more meaning, considering how many artists were put in one room and just what it took to pull that off. But yeah, certainly a great man, having it passed on, given his many contributions. Sophie Mokoena, as always, thanks very much indeed for helping us make sense of these major developments, not only in politics, but also in pop culture, as it were, as we also reflect on the passing there of Quincy Jones, who died at the age of 91.